Are we on? It's hard to know, No 3, 2, 1 today, which is, it's like counting normally, but backwards. Good morning, this is Backchannel. I'm Anthony. It's 9 o'clock on the nose, and I'm in Los Angeles, California, here on the West Coast. And you are wherever you are, which is great, Hang out, spend your time with us the next couple of hours. 21st of March, which is... we're almost like halfway through the year already. I don't even know how that happened. But it's really nice to spend the morning with you. If you are elsewhere, outside, maybe it's your lunchtime, maybe it's your afternoon, you can message the show at any time. You just have to send a little kind of text message via your browser. You can go to backchannel.tv and do that there. Or you can talk to your Echo Show. If you have an Echo Show, then just wake it up, say the word say, and then your message. And also we're on YouTube streaming, and you can message in that way too. Just follow the show and place a comment in the comments section. So lots to talk about today. Obviously, we're going to kind of focus on the war in Ukraine because Mariupol has basically been flattened now. So that's something to talk about and look at. We also have the morning papers to work our way through. And also, what was the other thing that was here? We've got a whole new scenario today to consider. Let me find it. Here we go. That's right. Yes. It's the Republicans voting against the Russian sanctions. That's right. That's what we want to look at and talk about, and why it is that they think, for some reason, that it's not a good idea. And whose side are they really on? Also, Putin's war on Ukraine being financed by Russia's vast oil and gas wealth, but the conflict may signal the end game for the carbon mafia. So that to look at. And also NASA's moon rocket is going to make a debut, and we will be celebrating... Women's History Month as well. All this stuff, this is basically the magic and the majesty of today. So, maybe you can join us for some of this at some point. And Travis is with us as well. Travis, do you want to kind of slide in? I mean,
Uh-oh.
There he is. Welcome. I think I was just reading from a completely old prep document just then, so don't panic. I've got the right one.
Oh, fantastic. All right.
I feel like if you do it with like a plum... then it doesn't really matter. You just, with confidence. It's an American thing. I've learned it since I moved here. It's like, it doesn't matter if it's inaccurate. Just say it, be proud of it, and everybody will buy into it.
Speak first, learn later. That's sort of the whole MO here.
Yeah, and but I've always been like that. So for me, this is very natural, It really, really suits me. Where are you? Where in the country are you?
I'm in Los Angeles.
No.
Yeah.
Are we like neighbors?
We're globally, yes.
Because Hal is like a mile away from me. And,
really?
Yeah, and it's so weird that I've been watching him for since like November, and I just assumed that he was in New York because of his accent, and it turns out that he's just a mile away from here. I could literally get him to do my Instacart shopping for me.
Yeah, in fact, I recommend it. He's fast.
He's fast, and he tips well.
Yes, exactly.
I live up in the hills, and I once ordered some food for delivery, and it was working its way up the hill very slowly, and then I saw that it was on an Uber bicycle.
Oh no!
And it took 2.5 hours to get a pizza. And when the guy arrived, he was so sweaty, I offered him a shower and the pizza. It was very interesting. It doesn't really show the terrain on the maps.
Yeah.
They just shows the distance. So whilst Hal might be a mile from me, the reality is it could take 45 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Especially if you're on a bicycle with the weight of a pepperoni pizza on the back there. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't make it too often up that way, but every time I do, it's amazing the variety of landscapes you'll find in Los Angeles, and also how loosely planned it seems the whole city was. They sort of built out from the center and just kept spreading with no real regard for, I guess, city infrastructure to an extent.
Or water. Or sewage.
Yeah.
Or any of these things.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. It is. I mean, this is such a great city. LA is such a great city, but in terms of like infrastructure, it's a little bit weird.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a septic tank up here, to destroy our bathroom activities, rather than a mainline sewer. And it's literally like living in a sewer sometimes, you know? It's so nice to wake up in the morning and step outside and smell that kind of fresh ammonia first thing in the morning. What a joy.
Yeah.
Stacey's popped in. She can't stay long because she's got Bible study at 11:30, so we'll just bear that in mind. Cold Cricket is here as well. Stacey says, hi, Travis. It must be very confusing for people today, you know, but Carla's on holiday. She's taken a well-deserved 3-year vacation. People say to me, why don't you take vacation? Because, I mean, I don't like to take time off. And it's because I realized, I don't know if it's the same for you, were you born here in LA?
Born in the Bay Area, so I'm from Northern California.
That's nice. Well, you're also lucky to be born somewhere that is being on vacation. You live on vacation. You grew up on vacation, and I didn't. I grew up in a very grey metropolis. And so for me, like moving 5,500 miles to this kind of sunny space, I don't need to go on vacation. I'm already on vacation. I've been on it now for over 5 years.
Lifetime vacation started when the plane landed.
But does it feel like that for you? Or do you need to get away from it?
That's an interesting question. I do shake it up now and then, but I don't really take a break. I'll change my scenery once in a while. I'll go to, in fact, sometimes I'll seek out the gray. I'll go to the Pacific Northwest. I'll find Oregon and Washington, things like that. Big fan of that because, again, I've lived in this sunny paradise my entire life, give or take. So I think it's... But to answer your question more succinctly, yes, every day I walk outside and it's 71 degrees and it's breezy no matter what time of year it is. And I go, wow, this is great. This is just really something else.
I'm so pleased that you don't take it for granted. I mean, I don't.
No.
Although you should live outside a septic tank and then see how that kind of works for you.
I'm good.
But I do feel like, you know, it's a blessing, isn't it, to kind of be born into a place that is on a list of places where other countries want to go for vacation.
Yep.
Now, I understand that, you know, people would want to come to London for vacation. I get that. But you don't go for the weather. And you don't go because it's going to put a spring in your step and a song in your heart. You go because you want to, like, see the Queen or, you know, see the Queen.
And there's like some cool stone buildings from, you know, several...
There's a couple.
100...
1,000, I think you'll find.
Yeah.
You know, we have churches from like 867.
When you start having
AD.
monuments built in the triple digits.
Yeah.
Wow. They don't build them like that anymore.
Have you been to London?
No, I have a roommate that lived there for a long time in school and just yearns for it daily.
But your roommate had lived there.
Yeah. I went to college
I
in
see.
London.
Well, can I recommend an interesting thing that you might want to try? Because, you know, people ask me if I miss London, and I give them the immediate answer, which is no.
Don't send me back. You can't make me go back.
Right? So there's a guy called Urban Walker on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
And he basically has like a GoPro on a gimbal. And he just walks around London every day in high definition. Well, in 4K, actually.
That sounds wonderful.
Screw high definition. I mean, what is that? He walks around London in 4K. So you don't see him, you just see what he can see. And he uploads about 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just watch him walking around London on my big television.
Wow.
And it's like I'm there. So I've been able to see, like, he walks around, you know, Oxford Street, the famous shopping districts and tourist areas, but he also kind of gets a little windy as well. And it's very interesting because I can see, you know, if people are wearing masks or not and what the, you know, how social distancing has played out during this period of pandemic and all this stuff. And it's very interesting to me, you know? It's very interesting to kind of get a snapshot. And, I mean, he's doing London, but there are people doing this all over the world.
Wow.
So did you know about this? Did you
No,
know
I
this
had
was
no
a thing?
idea. I didn't. There's like a whole...
It's a whole
secret-
genre.
It's a whole genre. It's like a crowdsourced tourism board. This is great.
Boom. They should call it that. They'd get a lot more hits. But I really enjoy just sitting back. I mean, the other thing I watch on a live stream, his isn't live, obviously, but I watch the airplanes landing at LAX on a live stream.
Ah.
There's a guy now who's live streaming LAX, and I just have it on. You know, just have it on. Like to see them land. Check everyone's okay.
You have the phone at the as soon as something looks wrong, that's it. I'm
Yeah.
calling it in.
Yeah, I just, I send a text to the mayor, and I'm like, that Delta.
Hey, Eric,
You know?
things
Yeah.
aren't going so hot.
Yeah, the right wheel went down before the left wheel, and the nose, it was a bounce. Do something about it, Mr. Garcetti. And he's like, I'm in India. What do I care?
I am most of the way out the door.
Yeah, I was on that plane. He's like, I've gone. So that's, just a little snapshot on what it's like, in my apartment. Just
I like that.
Streams of walking around and the planes landing.
That one, the second one, luckily, or I guess unluckily, I don't know. As you said, planes landing at LAX. I heard a plane landing at LAX because I live about a half mile from LAX.
Do you?
Yeah.
Do you live in In-N-Out Burger?
Yeah, in the back room.
Well, that's not a bad thing. I mean,
it's
you
cheap.
could just lie back and have them drop French fries through that machine and straight into your mouth,
Who told you about that?
right?
Yeah.
The French fries at In-N-Out Burger in this town are controversial.
Yes.
People will go and buy the burger and the shake from In-N-Out and then go to McDonald's and get the fries.
I have had.
I mean, that's the commitment of
roommate-
the American, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I've had roommates do literally that because the In-N-Out Burger is incredibly close. We're within a mile, but then the McDonald's is our actual neighbor.
Great.
Yeah, it's everything you could want out of American culture. It's great.
Do you ever like to go to the wrong fast food joint and order from the wrong menu? So go into McDonald's and ask for a double Whopper with cheese, or to go into Burger King and ask for a double animal style. Have you ever tried that? It's
No.
great fun.
I haven't. I couldn't bear it. Though I am interested to see what would happen though. What would that
It's
be?
like a social experiment. Don't think of it as anything other than fun.
All right, deal.
Brian's joined us. He's just dropped in. Brian, welcome. Blushing Panda is in as well. That might be Jen. I'm not so sure. Stacey says, Anthony and Travis, I have to go. It's time for Bible study. Well, go and seize your day, Stacey. I know that you're like 3 hours ahead of us, but now's the time, and we'll see you tomorrow, hopefully. Do you like a little aeroplane? You a fan?
Aeroplane is in the
American airplane. Do you like a little airplane, like travel? Do you like to get on the plane?
Oh,
Do you
sorry. I'm like,
enjoy
is
the
this
process?
I'm like Jefferson airplane, Starship? Now and then I don't travel nearly as much as I should because, as mentioned, I live in Los Angeles. Where am I gonna go?
Yeah, this is a good answer.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. What's the furthest you've been on an airplane?
not that far. Ashland, Oregon.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So you've never sat on a plane for like 11 hours like I used to have to do to come here all the time?
The worst thing I've done was I had a layover in Salt Lake, and I thought I was just gonna die.
How long were you in Salt Lake City?
About 40 minutes.
You really need. This is the thing about growing up on the West Coast that worries me for my children, is that you grow up soft. You know?
Yeah.
Like you've really not
Yeah,
been
I did.
hardened by the British weather. You've not been hardened by the stresses of having to kind of push your way through a bustling
No.
metropolis.
No.
But I guess you're also very lucky. Who would want to have any of that stuff? It's not really necessary.
No. And, to Los Angeles' credit, some kind of metal is made on the 405 or the 110 at rush hour. It's attached to something.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it must be very difficult to sit in such a huge space with nobody lying on your shoulder, being able to listen to the music or the podcast that you want to listen to.
Oh,
no. To choose the temperature of the environment, a little AC, maybe windows, depending on your choice. To press that button to close the outdoor vent.
Huh.
It must be very difficult to
Wonder
have
if
your
I can
snacks with you and some
just
shrink
Shrink out of my own skin real quick. My bad.
It must be very difficult to deal with that.
Yeah, it's not for the meek of heart.
Yeah. A little perspective, I think, is always helpful at times like this. I've only once been stuck in traffic in LA.
Really?
Well, I don't commute, right? So I'm not like in that daily thing. I mean, to get here, I literally had to walk down about 17 steps. But I did get once stuck in a jam with my kids in the car because there was an incident, a police incident. They love to like close every lane of traffic when something happens. I don't know why. I guess it's because everyone's got a gun. They just want to like protect people. But
yeah.
And we sat for about 2.5 hours, and that was pretty bad. There was no food in the car, or there were the scraps of food that we were literally like putting our hands down the gaps in the seats to see if there was any crumbs that we could feed the children with.
Small price.
Small price, but that was the only time I've really been stuck. But in the main, it's such a great city to kind of get around in. Everywhere takes half an hour, doesn't it? Like everywhere, wherever you want to go, it's always like 29 minutes.
Depends on the time, but more or less that is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to factor in 30 minutes.
Yes.
Just factor it in.
Yeah. Big, anybody who's coming to Los Angeles, if you haven't been here before, in whatever maps software you use on your phone, turn on the travel time thing. Just do yourself a favor. Don't leave it up to you.
No.
Let the internet
Trust the
tell
software.
you. Yeah, trust the software.
I have a theory on this.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, if everybody used the same software, if we all used Google Maps, and we stuck to it,
mm-hmm.
and we didn't deviate,
mm-hmm.
the algorithm in the sky would be able to direct traffic evenly between the streets and would prevent any traffic jams. Because they'd see if there's 1,000 cars, for example,
mm-hmm.
they could evenly distribute 1,000 cars on different routes so that nobody was sitting in a traffic jam.
So you don't have not just the one, because now you have the 3 to 5 satellites up there, all making their own,
all doing different things.
Yeah.
Whereas if everybody was like feeding off the same server, and people actually, because the next step from this is automation. So the car drives itself, and therefore the software will be able to send you on a route that is not congested.
Mm-hmm.
But if people are kind of going off piste, then they'll end up sitting in traffic or creating a traffic jam. You've got to trust the software, Travis. Got to.
Yeah. There's no other way I can get around in the city. So I'm for that because also, I've tried a few, and you referenced Google Maps. That's never steered me wrong. I think Waze tried to get me to drive into someone's living room once.
Waze is too many turns. I'm like quite a lazy driver. I like to just sit back and just be driven. And Waze means that I have to turn left, which is not something that's possible in this town. Right? But weirdly, Google owns Waze now. And so
really?
Yeah, and so it's kind of, there are some similarities, but Waze makes you do too much driving.
Yeah.
And to save, 2 minutes? It's not necessary. Apple Maps, forget it. I mean, and every 2 weeks they're like, we've fixed Apple Maps. Like we've got a new version. This one is life changing. This is gonna be different. And every time I'm like, I've missed the turning.
Yep.
I've missed the turning. The software doesn't catch up fast enough, and literally like the turn was back there.
Mm-hmm.
It's so depressing.
It's a shame.
Because the interface on Apple Maps now is beautiful. I mean, it looks great. And if you come off the freeway at a turn off, the map becomes a visual graphical interface where it shows you in 3D where you are. Have you tried this?
No, I haven't. I knew there was a recent update. I have not checked it out.
Totally new. Wow. You come off and it literally recreates the environment in a virtual space.
That's exciting. I wish it would help you get to where you were going faster. Okay.
No, that's not a thing.
Well, better luck next time.
Let's go to Omaha now and the World Herald. They lead with schools plan for spring in pre-pandemic fashion. This is a little paper review for this Monday, March 21. And parents, teachers hopeful for return to normal amid rollback of restrictions. This is the appointment book at Tip Top Tux in Omaha is filling up. That's one of the many positive signs that springtime in Nebraska could be the most normal period school kids have experienced since before the pandemic. Isn't that wonderful? I think they just need to look good for their, is it for a prom or something? I don't know. But whatever it is, it's great. Oh, Kobe's in. Welcome, Kobe, from Florida. Nice to see you. Defiant Llama, that's a good one. And Red Baboon, 7 out of 10. Thank you. Nice to see you. Where are we heading now? What's the date? 21st, 22nd, 3rd, the 22nd, 21st. Oh, yeah, I am on the right. It's so hard to kind of see which which I can't even talk now. I've lost the power of speech. Ignore me. East Bay Times, that's what I was trying to say. Long commutes, crammed quarters and couch surfing. UC Berkeley students struggle to contend with housing that's too scarce and too pricey. Well, this is the problem, isn't it, for students? It's like, really, everything should be free. Your education should be free. Your accommodation should be free. It should be free because you're a student. There's enough money in this country, like in the national budget, to make it all free. And they don't, because this country is not designed like that. Where I'm from, it's different. But here, there's no provision for it. Like I heard on the radio this morning, they were talking about provisions for COVID-19. Like the budget is going to run out for COVID-19. So for people that need additional treatments, if they're in hospital or something, the budget is going to literally run out. They have to plan it, whereas where I'm from, the budget would never run out. If you're ill, you get free medicine. That's just the way it is. Here, they make a whole thing of it. Where's the money going to come from? Well, you do give 2/3 of the national budget to the military. So it's very interesting to me. I have a slightly different perspective. Ukraine shifting to war of attrition is the headline on the East Bay Times this morning. They lead with Ukrainian authorities said on Sunday that Russia's military bombed an art school sheltering about 400 people in Mariupol, and tearful evacuees from devastated port city described how battles took place on every street, weeks now into the siege. The fall of Mariupol could allow Russian forces in southern and eastern Ukraine to link up, but Western military analysts said that even if the surrounding city is taken, the troops battling a block at a time for control there may be too depleted to help secure Russian breakthroughs on other fronts. I mean, they're just not getting what they need, the Ukrainians. Again, because it took so long for Congress to kind of agree to what was going to be sent and the money, and it's just too late. They needed all this stuff 4 weeks ago. Also on the front of the East Bay Times, Perks could return SJSU president to campus. This is the moving trucks pulled into the San Jose State University president's house in the Rose Garden neighborhood in this past week, 3 months after Mary Papazan resigned in the wake of sexual abuse scandal that rocked the school's athletics department. There's always a scandal. It wouldn't be the same without a scandal. Chicago Tribune this morning for this Monday, where there's smoke. This is CTA dealing with spike in crime and complaints about bad behavior. Here's what could be behind it and what commuters can expect as they return to office. Yes, as the CTA looks back to draw back riders, the agency is grappling with spikes in violent crime and complaints that more riders are breaking rules, leading to issues like smoke-filled train cars. For much of 2021 and 2020, police issued more tickets for smoking, drinking and other infractions on the CTA per million riders than they did the year before the pandemic, in a Tribune analysis of ticketing data. I mean, look, if you can't smoke on the train, where can you smoke? It's just basic knowledge. Get on the train, have a cigarette, have some snacks. Yeah. Attorneys, consultants cash in on the map battle. This is negotiations between black Latino aldermen over redrawing Chicago's ward boundaries have resulted in more performative name-calling than compromises, but the city's cash register keeps ringing for private specialists, each side hired. I mean, people make a fortune out of anything public here, don't they? The money that gets wasted on bureaucracy, in this case, it's pure bureaucracy. $720,000 in this case, according to invoices the Tribune received from the city through an open records request. McCormick Place gears up for the return of conventions. This is the Inspired Home Show is coming back to McCormick Place after a 3-year pandemic hiatus. We used to have a show like that in England called the Ideal Home Exhibition. Similar, different name, same concept. North Carolina now, the News Observer this morning. Arrest of car owner raises questions about castle doctrine. A Cary resident shot a man he said broke into his car and then tried to run away, according to the town's police department. Does North Carolina law allow him to do that? He was charged with assault and deadly weapon with intent to kill and inflicting serious injury. happened on Tuesday morning last week. The man started to run and was shot as he fled. Why do they do that? Why would you shoot someone who's running away? Like, conceptually, think about that. If you can't chase after that person, it's not your job to execute them. It's your job to catch them on another day if you can't run after them. Catch them. Put them on trial. Imprison them if necessary, or set them free. But it's not the police's job to execute them in the back. Under North Carolina state law, a statute commonly called the Castle Doctrine outlines when people may use deadly force to defend their home, car, or workplace from an imminent threat. Wake County District Attorney Lauren Freeman said she could not comment on the specifics of the Tuesday shooting case. She said the defendant, if as any, has a presumption of innocence. Yeah, well, he still got shot like 6 times in the back. Come on. Records on drawing of voting maps become public, but not all. Also on the front of the newspaper here, it says in the summer of 2021, a 2-sentence email arrived in the inboxes of each staff member of the North Carolina General Assembly offering the ethics tip of the day. The topic, confidentiality. Yes, the legislature was months away from what would become yet another pitched battle over redistricting. That normally a once-in-a-decade process of redrawing political lines that in North Carolina at least had taken place a lot more frequently. I mean, I'll just summarize this. This boundary line redrawing is designed to enable one party rather than the other to get more votes. So it's basically a way to cheat the electoral system. So the election is not fair anymore because certain communities who are more likely to vote Republican, i.e. white communities, will be drawn, the line for the boundary will be drawn around those communities to give the Republican incumbent a better chance of winning the election. Now, Democrats have done this as well, but it's already stacked in favor of Republicans. And so Republicans know that they're not going to win the election based on policies because they want to, take the country back to the 1950s. So instead, they're deciding to cheat. Just cheating. Humorous Aphid is with us. Pure Cobra, Kobe, Defiant Llama. Thank you for spending your time with us this morning here on Backchannel. You can message me. You don't just have to jump in. You can message. You can join in. You can go to backchannel.tv, or you can easily, with an Echo show, that's an Echo speaker that's got a screen on it. You wake it up with whatever your wake-up word is, Echo or whatever. Then say the word "say" and then your message, and it'll come through to me here. Times Union this morning, they lead with COVID infects state event. Counties have been on the front lines during the pandemic, implementing mask mandates, coordinating testing and vaccinations, and tracing the virus's virulent path through their populations. Well, now an annual gathering of county officials appears to have lit the fuse on a fresh round of infections rocketing through their ranks. At least 3 elected officials have tested positive for COVID-19 in the New York State, according to the New York State Association of Counties annual conference at the Desmond Hotel in Colony last week. Yeah, it was like a super spreader event because people are not wearing masks because they think it's over, and it's not over. I mean, it's ironic that this kind of removal of the mask mandate in schools has happened 2 weeks before this spike in Europe is going to head to America. Spike is massive in Europe, in England as well. It's huge. France, it's huge. And America normally gets it 2 to 3 weeks after Europe. That's how long it takes for everybody to get on planes and bring the new strain of COVID over. Through art, community blooms. Excuse me, is the headline. Markers, crayons, and paint covered the long table where adults sat hunched over their creations while music played in the background. Some focused on their artwork in silence. Others fell into conversation about their pieces or their life experiences. "I am grateful for my life," one woman said in front of her watercolor painting of flowers blooming from a vase. The words "Love is in the air" written in cursive next to the flowers. Yes, this is classes in Albany's West Hill offering struggling adults a creative outlet. So that's the Times Union on this Monday morning. I hope you had a nice weekend, by the way. Did anything happen this weekend? Was there like a Super Bowl, or was there a Halloween, or was there a... Did anything happen? Travis? Was there a thing this weekend? Was there like a... Oh, yes, there was! There was the Los Angeles Marathon this weekend.
There was both the Los Angeles Marathon, which one of my roommates ran in. By the way, I have a lot of roommates, if you haven't figured that out by now.
Yeah, I'm working that out.
Yeah. And because those are all, every roommate I've referenced was a different roommate. And also it was the start of the well, not the start, but the continuation of the NCAA March Madness tournament, which is usually everybody loses a bunch of money in their office.
You have to explain that to me. I really don't understand.
Sure. So every year, except for the last 2 years, kind of, because of the pandemic, college basketball, men's and women's, when we get to March, they have their tournament, and they do a bracket. And they call it March Madness because over the span of, I think, 4 weeks, you go from, if I'm not mistaken, 32 teams down to one national champion. And there are a lot of reasons that people watch this. Obviously, loyalties to alma maters, checking out prospects that will become professional players shortly after, and also, it's a great way to lose money. Yeah.
And who doesn't like that? Who doesn't enjoy? It's gambling basically, right?
Yeah.
The joy of the gamble.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that was about it that happened. Yeah, those are all the notables.
And did you run the LA Marathon this weekend, or did you give it a miss this year again?
No, I've once again continued my my preemptive retirement from all marathons.
There's a lesson that people learn when they move to Los Angeles. My sister just moved here, and she got caught up in it. And that is that you don't leave the house when the LA Marathon is on. You know, it's like, don't think about driving anywhere if you live, anywhere near the route. She lives in Silver Lake.
Oh,
and
no.
she was supposed to be coming over here, and she didn't know about the marathon.
Oh, no.
And so she basically just drove into the finish line. And she's like, Google Maps is going crazy. It's sending me all over the town. And, if she'd have known, she would have jumped on the 101 and just driven up the valley.
Over the top,
and completely, separated herself from the route. But, it just took her like 2 hours to go like a 30-minute drive.
Now, from your perspective, was this I forgot to mention this, or were you like, let's see how she does?
Oh yeah, it was a test. It was definitely a test of wits to see how she would cope, to be thrown in the deep end. Because when I first moved to LA, and I didn't realize that the LA Marathon literally disables the entire city, I got stuck in it for plenty of time. The best part of it is like driving south of the route and then trying to like cross north. Like, how I just can't get across. It's like in National Lampoon's European Vacation when Chevy Chase is trying to get off of the roundabout outside the Houses of Parliament. He's like, I just can't turn left. And I just felt the same, just like literally couldn't get access to where I needed to go. And in the end, you just have to like park up and go into a 7-Eleven and just buy Cheetos and just sit it out.
Yep. Yep.
So I don't know what happened to my sister. I haven't spoken to her since. That was, she's probably still there. She's probably on her 50th bag of Cheetos right now.
Well, welcome to LA.
Yeah, it's an initiation ceremony. That's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it's like you have to do it once.
Absolutely. I've been very lucky to not only not run in it, but not be stuck in it either. Every year I hear about it, I go, no, I'm not leaving the house.
Yeah. You just have to accept the fact that that's a special day in the Los Angeles calendar.
It is.
I remember walking down Sunset about an hour after the run finished, and the mess was incredible. Obviously, the road was still closed, but there was just like cups and discarded sweatbands. I don't know, stuff,
just
towels,
runner
tissues, trash. And I was like, wow, like what is this? You need to have another marathon of cleaners, doing 26 miles afterwards with like dustpan and brush.
Yeah, and this is not to, try to poke holes in the idea of running a marathon or marathons or public events in general, but it sometimes if you're in the right kind of mood, you can look at that and be like, well, why did we even do it?
Yeah. What was the point?
Yeah. Like, you can just run 26 miles. You don't have
I mean, I do know several people that have run marathons, and it is a great achievement.
It is. It is.
But it's also, I agree, it's also like it's a lot. It's a lot. You know, why run 26 if you could run 2?
Yeah, or
And surely running 2 is going to be quicker.
that is, I never run more than 2.5. That's my physical. I just don't do it.
I did a hike yesterday. They call it a hike here, of course. It's not. It's just a walk.
Yeah.
Why they call it a hike? You know, where I'm
It's
from,
a big,
hike,
such
hike
a lie.
requires like mountaineering equipment and you know, sticks and like a, you know, some kind of oxygen device.
Where'd
Here,
you hike?
all you really need is like Lycra and a bottle of Dasani. You know, Dasani is banned in Europe. Did you know that?
Really?
Banned.
In Europe, like whole cloth.
Oh yeah, it came out like whenever it came out, 10, 15 years ago. It's made by the Coca-Cola company, I think. And you know, it's advertised as being this kind of spring water or whatever.
Yeah.
And obviously, with the Food Standards Agency in England, which has you know actual standards, not like in America where they're just like
That must
just
be nice.
sniff it and they're like, yeah, that's all right. Gives you cancer, but it doesn't smell bad.
Yeah.
So they looked into the origins of Dasani to see how it was made, and it turned out it's literally just tap water. It's not spring water or mineral water. It is literally tap water.
Well.
And so you can't charge like $2 for it if it's tap water, because tap water should be, you know, free flowing from your faucet. So they banned it because you just can't sell tap water in a bottle. It's just ridiculous. But for some reason here in this wonderful free country, this capitalist country, you know, it's like you want to pay the Department of Water and Power? Go ahead. You also want to pay them again for putting it in a plastic bottle? Be my guest.
I don't like that I just learned that. That's upsetting to me that I didn't know that. But thank you.
You're welcome. I'm full of information like this. You know, I really, I can put a downer on anything.
Well, you know, one could argue just having the perspective of coming from a, to say similar country in the terms of like Western countries, but still has fundamental differences that some would argue make for a much more functional social structure to a certain extent. Yeah, I'm trying to sugarcoat the idea that, like, I love living here, but sometimes, you know, as we've been finding out, especially recently, living in America is like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I was falling for that this whole time. Darn.
Well, look, I chose to leave what you call a functional country and move here. England is very dysfunctional. You know, it's a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not similar to America. I mean, we speak a similar language. You know, I
Right.
had to say faucet for you just now, but that's not a word we say in England. It's not an English word. It's an
What is the
American
English equivalent?
word. Tap?
Oh.
Yeah.
We give that some run here. We do use faucet more,
I know,
but
but you use faucet more. And so I'm trying to assimilate. You know, I think it's important if you relocate to a country, you should join in. You know, I don't want to come here and just like moan about it and just say everything's better in England, because it isn't. England is not better than America. It's just different. And Chris just joined us. Hi, Chris. Welcome. Nice to see you. And Cold Cricket says the time is 12:44 Eastern Time. Okay. Well,
it's
whatever
Asians
makes you
and
happy.
all there.
Whatever makes you happy. And so, but what I am interested in and what I've discovered since moving here is that people like yourself, and you're a perfect candidate for this, and I'm thrilled that you've never traveled beyond,
All right.
you know, the United States, because you literally don't know like what it's like in other places. I mean,
No.
I'll ask you some few questions and you take a guess.
All right.
So in America, you get, you know, if you work full time, you get what, like 2 weeks off a year. Is that right?
Theoretically, yes.
Theoretically. And does that include like public holidays, or are they on top?
It would be on top of 2 weeks paid vacation on top of the public holidays.
And you get paid on the public holidays?
Yes. There is no hard and fast, unless you're in a government job,
Yeah.
set of holidays you get paid for, though. Companies
Okay.
can sort of pick and choose.
Okay. And so, and do you know how many of those holidays there are?
No.
like-
Between some and not enough.
Yeah, it's like 4 or 5 or something.
Yeah, the
6.
big ones, and
big
then maybe
ones.
one more.
Yeah. So in England, the statutory holiday is 4 weeks paid. And
Paid?
paid, yes.
So
4
for 4 calendar weeks,
Yes.
you don't go to work, and they give you money.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we have like 16 public holidays. Paid public holidays.
That's another 2 weeks.
Correct. So we're up to 6 weeks. Now here comes the rub, my friend. How many sick days are you entitled to in America?
Well, you have to earn them through working.
What does that mean?
That means for every hour you work, you get, I think, 8 minutes or something like that. There's some equation. There's some dark magic where the more you work, the more time you accrue for sick days.
But what if you're sick?
Well,
And
we
you
don't
haven't
really talk
accrued
about.
You haven't accrued enough days. What happens?
Well, then you're not making any money, and you're probably fired.
Ask me what the equivalent is in the UK.
Anthony, what's the equivalent in the UK?
Unlimited sick days.
I hate this. This is a mean game.
It's a great game. Unlimited,
no.
because of course sickness is not your fault, is it?
Wait, hold on. Sick. When I get sick, it's not my fault.
It's not your fault.
Oh,
This
what?
is like Goodwill Hunting. It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Wish I can cry in command.
It's not your fault.
This is. So as I'm sure you've gathered in the way our system works, particularly in the workforce,
Yes.
if you're sick, it's absolutely if not your fault, which it usually is, it's absolutely your responsibility.
Right.
And if you're not there, this whole company might go under. At least that's how it's treated.
Yeah, but that's not true because invariably the company is, making billions,
Yeah.
gazillions.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a little question for you.
All right.
How many paid maternity days do people get in America?
Okay, this is also
So if you're going to have a
subjective.
baby and you have to go off, obviously it takes 10 months to gestate and born a baby, not 9. I've had 2 babies, so I know it's 10 months. How much of that is paid by the American, employer?
It's a great question. I wish this is one of those times I wish my mom was in the chat. I could ask her
Yeah.
what she got. I think for a lot of traditionally, if I'm not mistaken, the figure was like 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, if that. I don't know for sure though.
But in America, do you know?
No, I don't.
I know, I can tell you.
Oh, what is it? Oh, 0. Oh, it's 0. Oh.
0.
Oh, that's less than, well, anything.
Yeah, you don't get paid for having a baby.
That's unfortunate. Well, it's interesting. I can feel, and this isn't to say it's like anything nefarious, but I feel that effective living in America. I go, well, of course you wouldn't get paid for having a baby, which like that's not.
How many weeks do you think you get paid in England?
I can't even venture to guess.
39.
39?
Yeah.
That's most of the year.
Yeah, that's how long it takes to have a baby.
Oh. Okay, first.
39 weeks.
Oh, I mean, okay. Despite my seeming outrage, that's wonderful. That's so
Of course
good.
it is. And what about dads?
They're throwing dads in on this?
Yeah, of
Dads
course.
get in on this?
The dad didn't just like do his work 10 months previously. The dad
You
is...
mean there are other countries that don't treat fatherhood like we're salmons that show up once a year, impregnate, and then go
Yeah.
upriver? No, I would have no concept of how much paternity leave one would get.
In England, well, when I left England, which was over 5 years ago, it was 2 weeks. But I think it might be more now. I think it might be 4 weeks now.
Wow.
Let me give you a few other countries in Europe you might be interested to know. So England is 39 weeks paid maternity leave.
Great.
America, 0.
Wow.
Estonia, 20 weeks. Luxembourg, 20 weeks. Poland, 20 weeks. Italy, 21 weeks. actually 22 weeks. Hungary, 24 weeks. Ireland, 26 weeks. The Czech Republic, 28 weeks. Chile, 30 weeks. Croatia, 30 weeks. Greece, 43 weeks. And where gives the most amount of paid maternity leave in the world? Bulgaria, 58.6 weeks of paid maternity leave.
So they just, that first year, you're just out. You're gone.
Yeah.
I'm having a baby. I'll see you in a year.
Yeah. The
Wow.
United States is, in fact, the only country in the world that does not pay statutory maternity leave. It's the only country in the world.
So what you're saying is those periods of time, that is through the government, correct? I see. So that was my confusion.
No, sorry, it's not. No, that's not true.
Okay, that's your
If it's
employer,
a
it's
government
your
job, then yes, obviously. No, the private sector has to pay.
Oh, but that is mandated. That is the wow.
Of course.
It's interesting because they just leave that entirely up to the company's discretion here, and of course, more often than not, the company errs on the side of not paying for things.
Even companies like Walmart or Target or Kroger, the biggest companies in the country, Home Depot, I mean, they make billions of dollars a year.
Yeah.
Billions. In profit. That's not just revenue.
Well, they don't make that much paying for babies. No, it's interesting. It seems the farther down you get, the more you downsize a company.
Yeah.
And, for as little as I've traveled, I've had like 28 jobs. It's been a mess. But the few companies I've worked at, the smaller it is. And, this isn't necessarily, this sounds like I'm spinning this whole I'm not trying to find a soapbox here, but in my experience, the smaller the company, the more comprehensive the benefits package, because it's a person to person. The person who owns and runs this business sees you in the face because you go in there and you know them, and they care. Yeah, I mean, not all the time, but.
And this is, excuse me, this is why it's very important that we have perspective and we travel. This is why you have to travel, Travis, Just travel, because...
Leave!
I thought I knew a little bit about America before I moved here, and clearly I didn't. I had to move here to really get a flavor of what it was all about. And that's really the tragedy. It's like, I don't know. I feel like in America, we grow up being told that it's the greatest country in the world.
Yes.
Right?
Especially if you're around a 9/11-ish baby or somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Right. But what do they say with that? What do they say? Why, or do they just say that sentence?
Well, because we won. Whatever that means.
Win what? What did you win?
Huh? Oh, we don't. That's about where the argument's just like, we it's the greatest country. We did it.
But what did what? I don't get it.
That's your guess is as good as mine. I'm not sure.
The war?
Sure. Name one.
The Second World War?
Yeah, why not?
But the Second World War only got as far as Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. It didn't even come to mainland America.
Oh, well, I mean, we still won, though. So, yeah, chalk that one up. Hanging that banner.
I actually heard Kevin McCarthy say this out loud recently.
Really?
He's the leader of the Republicans in the Congress. And, he said, America won the Second World War for Europe.
Jeez. Oh, my God.
Now, I'd never heard that said out loud. I didn't realize that the perspective from America was that, the Americans swooped in and won the Second World War. That is not factually accurate.
We see ourselves as literally Superman in that context. It's hilarious.
Because some troops went over to Europe and helped, fill the void.
Yeah, of what you were already doing a good job of.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why, yeah.
But, when you grew up, when were you being taught this in school? Were you taught, what was the education around the history of the war? That America won the war for the Allied forces? I mean, can you remember?
Yeah, by and large, the education was, we stayed out of it until the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and then we're like, that's it. You've woken the sleeping giant. Here we go. And then we won the war. And then there was some cool scientific stuff that we figured out about the atom bomb that led to a boom in manufacturing, but we don't really reference the part of how we wiped out 2 entire cities in that. That kind of gets swept under the rug. Yeah, it's a really exceptionalist view, and it's funny because I grew up in the Bay Area, a very progressive part of the country from a sociological perspective, and even then it took until maybe when I was leaving high school for there to be more of a critical look at history, and not just our achievements but our missteps. But even still today, I mean, it's in the news all the time. We're trying to reframe education. There's this sort of tug of war between reframing it as it was and how we wish it to be and how we wish to remember it. It's yeah. But to answer your question, yeah, no. We were taught that we went in and won the war for everybody, and everybody is very grateful that we showed up.
It's very interesting to me. Because, I mean, it's partly true. Obviously, a lot of countries provided their, military personnel.
It's a world war.
It was a world war. But there's nothing in history that suggests that the Americans won it for the Allied forces. It's just very interesting. And of course every country has its own perspective. But it's almost like the truth is irrelevant.
In a lot of ways, it seems to be. I mean, we're seeing this play out today, literally today, in something like that, not just to pull a parallel out of thin air, but to Ukraine and Russia, where I think there was something that I was looking at today where Russia has labeled Facebook and Instagram extremist groups. And which is like, that's not to say this is a one-to-one, but it's just the idea of perspective and someone's reality being so unshakable in what they believe to be true, what they believe to be right, whether it's truly that or it's an ulterior motive or a mixture of both. But when lines are drawn, it's funny, even in retrospect, it feels like it takes decades, if not centuries, for any one party in a conflict, particularly the winning party, to look back and go, ooh, maybe we weren't totally in the right in everything that we did. Perspective takes an inordinate amount of time in the world of socio-political conflict, I think. If that makes any sense. I feel like I just went off the deep end there.
No, you did very well.
Thank you.
I mean, Donald Trump designated Antifa as a terrorist organization.
Right.
And Antifa is not even an organization. It doesn't exist. I mean,
No.
it's something that was created by his people to kind of designate anyone who didn't like Donald Trump as being a baddie. And Antifa is actually, the reason they called it Antifa is because it sounds Muslim, like Al-Qaeda. It's more helpful to his base to kind of have a foreign-sounding name, but of course it just stands for anti-fascism. And if you say it like Antifa, then, I mean, I am Antifa. Hopefully you are too.
Yeah.
We are all Antifa. That is, hopefully the nature of America is to be an anti-fascist country. So if you think about designating an entire movement of people, let's take 70 million out of the equation who voted for him and say the rest is what, there's 362 million people here. So, we're talking about like 270 million people he's designating as terrorists.
That is the greatest con, I think.
It's the greatest con. And the reason that he did it is because he was the fascist, right? He was the one that smoke bombed his own people who were peacefully protesting. He was the one who was disappearing protesters, BLM protesters, off the streets of Portland. He was the one that suggested there were fine people on both sides in Charlottesville. He was the one that said Mexicans on the southern border were criminals and rapists. He is the fascist, which is why he designates anybody who doesn't buy into what he says as being anti-fascist. Cold Cricket says, most people in America do not feel that way. I was not grown up to believe that we were the greatest country in the world, that I was believing. I do not recall any classroom that stated indefinitely we were the greatest country in the world. Well, that's good. I mean, that's interesting to know, and I'm very grateful for the feedback. Give me more, Harley's with us, Brian, Max, Heat, Mega, Phyllis, Descriptive Peacock, and Sleepy Rabbit. Thank you for joining. And Kez and William and Chris, and, it's wonderful that you're all hanging out with us here on Backchannel. Travis, could you line up the US news update? It's a little video that I'd like to play. It's a podcast that I make every day for the Volley Network. It's just 2 minutes long. It's a little kind of update on things happening in America that you might not be aware of. You can download it and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It's called the US News Update. And, if you like the sound of it, we'll kind of demo it here. And if you like the sound of it, then maybe you could download it. It's just, one of those things. So feel free to play it, full screen whenever you're ready. And I'll just, take 2 minutes to myself to have a sip of... I didn't even bring a drink, so, I'm not even going to sip anything, really. Don't know what I'm going to do. I'll probably just sit here and listen to it like you. Which begs the question, why play... March 21. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US news update. I'm Anthony Davis. A US judge ruled that the former county clerk from Kentucky knowingly violated the rights of same-sex couples by denying them marriage licenses in 2015, clearing the way for a jury trial seeking damages against her. The ruling from US District Judge David Bunning on Friday also denied a request for immunity from former Rowan County clerk Kim Davis. Davis thrust herself into the center of the US culture wars on the issue of LGBTQ rights by denying the licenses in 2015, citing her religious beliefs. She briefly went to jail for contempt of court over her refusal, and a deputy clerk in the eastern Kentucky county issued the licenses. Wildfires wiped out 86 homes in a majority of the small town of Carbon, Texas, the Dallas Morning News reported, as 4 fires west of Dallas burned 54,000 acres and killed a sheriff's deputy who was helping people flee. The 4 fires designated as the Eastland Complex have raged since Wednesday or Thursday in Eastern County, about 120 miles west of Dallas, and were about 30% contained, the Texas A&M Fire Service said on Saturday. About 85% of Carbon, with a population of 225, was burned. Governor Greg Abbott on Friday declared a disaster in 11 Texas counties and ordered flags to be lowered to half-staff in Eastland County in order of the sheriff's deputy Barbara Fenley, his office announced. Your daily US news update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device to open Backchannel. There it is, the US News Update. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you very much, Travis.
That was wonderful. I could listen to you talk all day. Wow.
Oh, you're very sweet. Well, wow. I've made nearly 1,000 of those now. Been doing those for, about 2.5 years, I think.
Really?
Yeah. So there's a lot of them. Well, it's a nice little daily update.
I know how I'll start my day tomorrow.
Oh, that's very sweet of you. Well, with me, probably, sitting right here.
Yeah, that too.
Let's jump back into the morning papers. The Seattle Times leads with Russia's war for Ukraine could be headed towards a stalemate, it says, amid a growing consensus that Russia's invasion of Ukraine is morphing into a bloody stalemate that could last months. Ukrainian officials Sunday blamed the Kremlin for a new spate of deadly attacks on civilian targets, including the bombing of an art school where hundreds had taken shelter. Firing rockets and bombs from the land, air, and probably for the first time from warships in the Sea of Azov, Russian forces broadened their bombardment of the besieged Ukrainian city of Mariupol on Sunday and have been forcibly deporting thousands of residents to remote cities in Russia, according to city officials and witnesses. I mean, that's kidnapping, basically. They're now kidnapping people and, forcing them into Russian territory. Ukraine's human rights spokesperson said on Telegram that residents were being transported across the border to a Russian city about 60 miles from the strategic city of some 400,000 on the Sea of Azov, and then sent by train farther into the Russian interior. The reports of forced removals could not be independently verified. Russia has not responded to the allegations, although Russian state media have reported that buses filled with what they describe as refugees have been arriving from Ukraine in recent days. Linda Thomas Greenfield, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, said on Sunday that she could not confirm the reports, but added it would be unconscionable for Russia to force Ukrainian citizens into Russia and put them into what will basically be concentration and prisoner camps. Few journalists or humanitarian aid workers have been able to enter Mariupol, where a relentless stream of bombardments has severed communication lines and left residents desperate for food, water, and escape. The situation is deteriorating even more across the weekend, with raging street battles. I mean, let's be very clear about this, and I don't think people want to say it out loud, but I'm going to say it out loud, and that is that Russia is winning this war. And the only reason they're winning is because they're using unscrupulous tactics. They're basically flattening entire cities. They're not shooting military targets anymore. They're taking out all civilian structures. They're literally razing the country to the ground. And that is a cheap trick in war. You know, in war there are some rules of engagement that are typical, and refugee corridors, escape corridors, these have not been adhered to. It's truly tragic. People are dying every minute. Regular people, not even military or conscripted people, just women and children. Fortunate Crocodile has dropped in, Spotty Bison, Harley as well, welcome. Great to see you here on Backchannel. You can message me at backchannel.tv. You can also write reviews there or put suggestions for the show. Just go to backchannel.tv on any browser, on your phone, on your laptop, on your desktop, however you want to do it. It's completely fine with me. Also a story about the fall of Kabul. Refugees begin school in the Seattle area. This is children out of Afghanistan lining up at the doors of Southern Heights Elementary, momentarily subdued as they waited for the first glimpse of American school. Awais is 9 in a sharp black blazer and white shirt led the way, followed by Fazilat, 10, in sparkling pumps and a bright pink headscarf, and 7-year-old Mirwaz, his father's hands resting on his shoulders. The 3 Afghan siblings, among one of the largest waves of refugees to come to the US in decades, had waited for this moment since flying out of Taliban-controlled Kabul in August. They spent 4 months on a Texas Army base and arrived in the Seattle area in December. "We're so excited you're here," Principal Andrea Smith told them, giving a tour in advance of the first day. She had them choose from an array of donated backpacks, showed them a room where they could pray, and told a class of students, "I know you guys will be there to help." The little school, with just over 200 students, including a large number of native Spanish speakers, did not have an interpreter on hand, but a custodian who emigrated from Afghanistan in 2019 surprised them by saying hello, speaking a mixture of Pashto and Dari, Afghanistan's primary languages. Abdul Bakashi reassured the children's dad that everything was going to be okay. So there we go. That's how the Seattle Times leads. Just one story here about the past 2 years. The coronavirus has wreaked havoc on American lives and the world at large. Dr. Ashish K. Jha has been there to make sense of it all. He's been hard to miss. You could find him on MSNBC before vaccines arrived, bluntly acknowledging it's hard to overemphasize how bad things are, or popping up on CNN, upbraiding maskless lawmakers for spreading COVID-19, or on Fox News proclaiming remote schooling a disaster. Yes, Ashish Jha is now the new guy in charge of the coronavirus response from the White House. He's taken over from Jeff Zients. I'm not sure why Jeff has left. Maybe he's gone back into the business world, the world of business. Photograph also of Ketanji Brown Jackson. She is of course, Joe Biden's pick for the first female black Supreme Court justice. It says it's become almost commonplace viewing. A woman nominated for the Supreme Court appears before the Senate Judiciary Committee. 4 of the past 7 nominees to the High Court have been women, but Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is the first black woman to be nominated for a seat on the nation's highest court. So there we go. That's how the Seattle Times kind of does its thing. I want to talk a little bit about Ketanji Brown Jackson because, she's a pretty special person. In terms of you will be hard-pressed to find somebody that has a bad word to say about her, So today she's been testifying before the U.S. Senate, and Republicans have an obsession with talking about demand justice at Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation hearings. It's the ultimate tell that they have thrown in the towel on putting up a meaningful fight against her nomination. With the exception of certain spotlight-seeking Judiciary Committee members like Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, most top Republicans have already acknowledged Jackson is too qualified to oppose all out without inviting backlash. For these Republicans, making side arguments about outside liberal groups offers a detour from having to frontally attack Jackson. I mean, just to put some little bit of context to this, obviously they're worried that Ketanji Brown Jackson is too left field. And they also don't like the fact that she's female and that she's black, because a lot of these Republican lawmakers, not all Republicans, not all lawmakers, but some of them are inherently systemically racist and sexist. And so they're more comfortable in the company of white men. So they feel intimidated by an experienced, educated black woman. And, to grow up as a woman in America is hard, and to grow up as a black woman in America is practically impossible. So to achieve the position of being nominated for a place on the Supreme Court is probably the greatest accolade of any black female in America. That's the furthest, because, of course, there's no black female in the White House other than Michelle Obama or Kamala Harris. But neither of them had the top job. One of them was First Lady, the other is Vice President. Senator Chris Coons, a Democrat from Delaware, he emphasized the broad and bipartisan support Jackson had received, including from police organizations and judges appointed by Republican presidents. She was also confirmed to the appeals court on a bipartisan basis. That was very recent, actually. So, it's very hard for Republicans to make an argument now, and of course they'll try. And Josh Hawley, as we know, is a kind of far-right extremist person, and Ted Cruz is probably the worst person in the Senate. He's a very, it's just a liar. Just makes stuff up, says it loudly and proudly. Chris Coons called meeting Jackson's brother, who he quoted as saying, "I'm not surprised I am here at all. This is the sort of thing my sister was destined to from the very start." Isn't that great? So Ted Cruz, he recounted the history of Supreme Court nominations. He lamented how contentious they've become. He notably left out the controversial and unprecedented decision by then Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to deny Barack Obama the opportunity to fill a Supreme Court vacancy, which infuriated Democrats and poisoned the already poisoned well. No Democrats have mentioned Merrick Garland, who Obama nominated but never received a hearing. He's now the Attorney General, of course. Well, echoing his Republican colleagues, he said the hearings would be different than the Kavanaugh hearings. No one is going to inquire into your teenage dating habits. No one is going to ask you with mock severity, "Do you like beer?" I mean, why is Ted Cruz such a fool? He's basically trying to put the knife into the Democrats, suggesting that their questioning of Brett Kavanaugh was in some way inappropriate. I mean, whether he sexually assaulted somebody in his youth is kind of important. If he drinks too much is kind of important. I mean, all of these things are connected, aren't they? During the course of Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing, he was accused by Christine Blasey Ford of sexually assaulting her in the 1980s when they were in high school. And she was actually probably one of the most convincing witnesses I have ever seen. You may remember that. And the Republicans basically claimed that she was just gaslighting him for political reasons. And that's the tragedy, isn't it? To deny a woman's history in sexual assault, to deny that that ever happened, to take her experience away from her, under the guise of political wrangling, it's so cheap, it's so offensive. And it's really the reason why, it really is the reason why, these old white men making decisions for young women is just so wrong, especially when it comes to abortion, as you know. I'd like to play you a clip, actually, if I can. Let me see if I can find it. I'd like to play you a little clip of a... Travis, you might be able to play it in as video, actually, if I send it to you. Travis, do you think if I send you a little thing on email, you might be able to play it in as a video?
I will be able to show it. I won't have the audio.
Okay, well, let me just play the audio then into my microphone. It's 2 minutes long, I pre-warn you, but it's definitely worth hearing, because this is in Kentucky. And this is... they're basically looking at the 15-week abortion ban, and they're about to ratify this. Old white men who are effectively going to tell young black women invariably what they can do with their bodies. And there was one female on the panel. Literally, it was all men on the panel making this decision about abortion in Kentucky. And there was one female, and she was kind of amazing. Amazing. So I'm just going to play you. She only spoke for 2 minutes, but when she did, it was so impactful. And, she really encapsulated what is wrong with these types of hearings and these laws that are being made across the country, invariably by old white men, about young women. And, it's not just abortion. There's a whole host of other things, trans rights and similar. But I'd just like you to hear what this particular woman said, and we'll talk about it afterwards.
Explain my no vote.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a diagnostic radiologist, and diagnostic radiologists historically and in many places in this state still do all of the first trimester OB ultrasound. So I am extraordinarily personally familiar with the development of a fetus in the womb. And for you to sit here and say that at 15 weeks, a fetus has a functional heart, a 4-chamber heart that can survive on its own is fallacious. That is not true. There is no viability. I look around at my colleagues on this committee. I am the only woman on this podium right now. I am the only physician sitting on this podium. This bill is a medical sham. It does not follow medicine. It does not even purport to listen to medicine. And for each and every one of my colleagues to be so willing to cast an I vote when what you are doing is putting your finger, putting your knee, putting a gun to women's heads. You are killing women because abortion will continue. Women will continue to have efficacy over their own body, whether or not you make it legal. I vote no, and I really apologize to the people in Kentucky that we are spending this much time and this much energy when we have families in poverty. We have single women heading households in poverty at a higher rate than any other group in the state. And you all are not addressing that. You all are making it worse. Thank you.
So there we go. It's very moving and it's very poignant. And isn't it interesting that throughout this entire debate about abortion in some of these Republican states, that we haven't really heard any voices like that? They've been silenced. As a clinician and as a woman who specializes in ultrasound, she's saying that there is no viability for a baby at 15 weeks. And yet these old white guys are claiming that A, there is, and B, that it would be illegal to have a termination at that point or beyond. And, this is the America that we're living in now, where the facts are irrelevant. It's become it's become one person's personal opinion that then becomes law. And I've been saying this a lot about Florida, with Ron DeSantis and his decision to kind of make up stuff about abortion, but also trans rights and even coronavirus, preventing kids from being vaccinated now, saying that it's not a thing. And he literally is just making it up. He just installed a new medical director for the state who knows nothing. He's has completely unskilled and is just a puppet for DeSantis. So, this is the thing. You pick your state, you have to choose wisely, And if you don't believe in the direction that some of these extremists are taking the state, then you need to move or you need to vote them out. It's your choice. I mean, you might like what they have to say, but to me it makes no sense. I'm going to turn on my air conditioning now. It's going to make a little bit of noise. There we go. I flick a little switch on the microphone that just takes the bass out. And then you can't hear the hum so much, but it was starting to get a little hot in here, so I turn on the AC, but it makes a little bit of noise. It's 10:24 here on the West Coast. It's 1:24 Eastern. I'm Anthony Davis. This is Backchannel. Sandy is with us. William, Calm Wolf, Monica, Karen, Nines here. Wonderful Fish joined in. Fortunate Crocodile and Spotty Bison and Harley as well. Welcome. Brian is here and Max and Heat. And Sleepy Rabbit and Phyllis and Mega and Descriptive Peacock. I mean, what a wonderful group. Oh, and Kez. Thank you, Kez. So we're just, talking about the news and what's happening across the United States. We've been discussing Ketanji Brown Jackson and her nomination to the Supreme Court. And Ben Sass has he's a Republican. He's been grilling her, and he also brought up the Kavanaugh hearings. He said he was pleased that Jackson's hearings hadn't been interrupted by theatrics and a bunch of yokels. Richard Blumenthal, the Democrat senator from Connecticut, said it was unfortunate that many of his colleagues were focused on grievances of Supreme Court hearings of past. He said this hearing should really be about you, not about us, he said to Ketanji Brown Jackson. She is an amazing woman, an amazing American. And I really feel like we kind of underestimate her skill to have come this far, considering that, the justice system is already a sticky place to work. But as a black woman, it must be near impossible. And so I really look up to anybody who holds high office, who's an African-American female here. People like Val Demings, there's so many people now who are becoming prominent leaders in their own right, who have spent their life fighting and struggling and having to re-educate people and be they almost have to evolve at a greater rate. They have to become a superior race just to navigate the racism or the blockings or the destruction that they face every single day. And to deny that, to think that that's not a thing, would be foolish, because, the evidence is clear. So, interesting, just kind of looking at Ketanji Brown Jackson. She'll be considered by the full Senate for a bid to replace the retiring Justice Stephen Breyer. Recent court nominations have drawn partisan rancor. Announcing her nomination last month, President Joe Biden called her one of the nation's brightest legal minds. He said it was long past time that a black woman be confirmed to sit on the 233-year-old U.S. Supreme Court, he suggested. The court plays a key role in American life and is often the final word on highly contentious laws, disputes between states and the federal government, and final appeals to state executions even. Travis, could you pop back in? I want to run something by you if you're interested. I don't know. But
yes.
If you're busy, then I understand. You can be busy.
Oh, no, I'm here.
Is that you having like a Mr. Slushy or something? What is that?
No, this is just the largest cup in the house for water.
That is a very big cup. Does that mean you don't have to go back and get more water? Is that what you're thinking?
Not necessarily, because I still have the entire Brita filter here. It's just an unending stream of water from.
That's interesting. Do you notice I've not had a sip of water since I started talking an hour and a half ago?
How you're functioning. I was just thinking about that.
I've also had like 5 hours sleep. But I've always felt that it's unprofessional to drink water in front of people if you're like putting on a show. And I learnt this when I went to see Barry Manilow in concert. I'm a very big fan.
Ooh.
Please don't tell anybody this.
All right.
And the guy is like, in his 70s, and he just would sing for like 3 hours with one break, but he would never have a drink. And I used to think this is amazing because, like, some comedians come on stage with a beer, like they're literally drinking while they're performing, or you know, some singers, they get, you know, just constantly drinking. Manilow never had a sip, never lost his voice, never felt the need to kind of lubricate his pipes.
Yeah.
And so I learned how to do it, you know, to deliver the words in an unlubricated fashion. Because, you know, if I was to have a drink, then it would sound like this. Hang on, I just like... And then we would carry on.
Right.
And then my voice would sound different to how it did a second ago because it had been lubricated.
That's a good point.
And
I
don't think that there's no consistency in that, is there? I mean, what you know, what am I going to do? Like, get my nails done while I'm sitting here as well?
I think there's something really interesting in that, because I used to be a music teacher and I taught voice for a period of time, and how much of our life we go through talking without really thinking about it. You know, we can be out and about and at a social gathering and we'll talk for hours on end and it doesn't register. But in this environment, when you're focused on speaking and it becomes the sole thing that you're sort of doing, you're doing it with intent. I think those are the moments when I think you've done something really incredible in conditioning and training your body, your nervous system, to be able to operate with the same ease as you would if you weren't doing it so intentionally. Because the more we focus in on something, the more tenuous it becomes. I think is like something that we do, like our body. Like if I'm like, I'm going to talk for 2 hours, myself, 20 minutes in, I'm like, I need water now, or I'm going to, I'm in the desert, I'm going to die. So it's a good tip. I appreciate that. You can do it. It's within the human capability to talk for 2 hours without water. We can do it. We've done it.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like, obviously I have a little drink, I have a tea before I come in, but otherwise if I was to drink water throughout the show, I would need to go to the bathroom throughout the show, you know, because I'm in my 40s. And you haven't got to this point yet, but soon you'll realize that your pipes inside, when you get to 40, you're basically your esophagus gets directly connected to your bladder. They rewire it. It doesn't go anywhere else first. It just literally goes straight to your bladder.
I might be there.
Really?
Yeah, a side effect of the lockdown was I spoiled my bladder, and anytime I even thought I might have to use the restroom. So
you trained yourself to kind of go all the time.
Yeah, I'm like a small
bad.
dog.
That's a condition. I had that, and I had to talk myself out of that as well.
Stronger man than I have to figure that out.
Well, there is a way to do it. It's to do with your prostate. If you don't want to go into too much detail, it's probably not a good idea. People might be eating their lunch. But it's basically because you can give yourself prostatitis. You know, you can infect your prostate with the timing of your toilet breaks. So you really need to, think about that.
I will. Thank you very much. I'm learning so much today.
Well, take these tablets after your bath and come back and see me in 2 weeks. And 2 weeks later, you came back and I said, how are the tablets? You said, I don't know. After drinking the bath, I didn't have any room for the medicine. The reason I kind of called you in was because I wanted to talk about the Supreme Court. And
sure.
We were talking earlier about the difference between Europe and America. Do you know what's completely new to me that I've had to get my head around?
No.
A political Supreme Court. Are you aware of the fact that in England the courts are not politicized? They are all non-partisan?
I was not aware of that, no.
How can you have a political Supreme Court? How's that even possible? Because justice will never be fair. Because some people believe in the death penalty and other people don't. Some people believe in abortion and other people don't. How is that a court? That's not a court.
Well, that's why you have this is me speaking facetiously, that's why you have a bipartisan appointed court over a long enough time span where it's always going to even out and you have consensus.
Yeah, but it's
right?
stacked at the moment. Most of the court justices are conservative.
Oh, how did that happen? What a tragedy. Oh,
right?
No.
We had Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett all confirmed in a short period of time under Donald Trump. And Amy Coney Barrett had never tried a case before. She was an academic, never done any court work. Completely unqualified. Brett Kavanaugh, as we've seen, is an alleged sexual predator. And
not a great public speaker.
Not a
either.
great public speaker, and he likes beer. And Clarence Thomas, who's currently in the hospital, he got a little infection, not COVID, but, he was the second black man to ascend to the Supreme Court. His wife is white, and she is a far-right extremist lobbyist. Did you know that?
I'd heard that, but I don't know the details of it.
Yeah, she really, if you were to look up, I forget her first name, but her surname is Thomas, I think. She is a real, far-right activist. So, of course, some people are saying that it's actually Clarence Thomas's wife that has the most sway on the Supreme Court.
Virginia Thomas.
There you go, Virginia, yeah. She's an interesting character, I was looking into some of the things that she champions, and she's not a, so she's a bad person, but she just doesn't get it,
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I find interesting about the world. Like, if you get it, if you understand, like, what the world and life is all about, then of course you wouldn't ban abortion. I mean, abortion was made legal in 1973. That was 47 years ago, 48 years ago.
Yeah.
So, we are going to go backwards if these people are allowed to continue doing these things. And, my worry is that to politicize the Supreme Court and have that seem normal, again, is Americans growing up in an environment where they're told it's the greatest country in the world, and yet you have a political Supreme Court, which means any decision, it's the highest court in the land. You can't take it beyond that. I mean, in Europe, we have the European Court of Human Rights. So let's say you don't feel like you have justice in your own country. You can then send it to the European Court of Human Rights.
Wow.
And then they will look at your case. Isn't that interesting that there is that kind of additional layer of assistance for people who feel like their justice has not been done in their own country?
That is the highest order of let me speak to the manager I've heard in my entire life.
Right? I'd like to talk to the manager.
Of this country.
Of this country, of
And
the
the rest
whole
of
of
them.
Europe.
Yeah.
So, it just doesn't make sense to me that, even governors being political, that's not something I'm used to. Mayors being political. Well, we have political mayors in England, but they make decisions for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have extremist views in politics as we do here.
Mm-hmm.
They would never ban abortion in England. I mean, they're just like, of course not. Of course you wouldn't. We're a socialist country with a conservative government. Boris Johnson is a conservative.
Mm-hmm.
But he would never ban abortion or trans rights or not consider climate change to be true. I mean, because it's just normal.
That's
Whereas,
something that struck me about him when he came to power, so to speak, was that in America we were drawing really hard parallels between him and Donald Trump, and in the years since, especially since the Biden administration has come in, it's like, oh, they're not, maybe look the same if you squint and they're far away, except one's, much paler and the other one's bright orange. Yeah. But in terms of practical application of policy, it seems that Boris Johnson's whole deal is much, as you said, he's a conservative government within a socialist country. There are some things he's not trying to paradigm shift the entirety, aside from the whole leaving the EU thing. But outside of that, it seems that a lot of the things that make England have been upheld from a social structure standpoint.
Well, they have to be. You can't, and the reason for that is because England is thousands of years old.
Yeah.
And so a country evolves over years, it has to form its identity, and America is just too young, it's still in its infancy, and so it's malleable.
That's a really interesting perspective.
People can make change. But a country that is thousands of years old, London was, dominated by the Roman invasion. I mean, we're talking about,
wow,
a whole different time. And so I do think that has a lot to do with it. The age of a country, and America is an experiment, and it's still a work in progress and still working stuff out. But I just foolishly thought that when Obama was elected, then everything was going to change from that point onwards. I thought that was a kind of a line in the sand for American politics and racism and all of the guff that went with it. And I was foolish.
You're not alone. Not alone.
Yeah. He was an anomaly. I've realized that now, to have a man that was so thoughtful and kind and black as president, that was an anomaly.
Yeah.
It wasn't the shape of things to come.
I think in a sense you could argue that it was the shape of things to come in that it was a step in a certain direction. It felt like a real hard step in a certain direction. And since then, after that, we had another hard step in a certain direction. This may be the era of hard steps, which just sounds unfortunate.
Watched a video yesterday of Trump showing up at a rally, a Save America rally, because of course America needs to be saved, from the woke brigade. And he came on to, that awful song that he always comes on to. And the crowd were just going insane, like he was like Jesus at some kind of, evangelical rally. He didn't even say anything. They just were screaming and like loving him. They love him. They've really, because it's a cult, the cult of Trump. There's a very good book called The Cult of Trump by Stephen Hassan, if you would like to read it. I recommend it. But the cult is, and it's a real cult, there's a lot of science and study behind how cults evolve and how they become cults. And, to be a Trumper is to be in a cult, because of course nothing that he says is true. So you end up with this kind of, the people that are screaming liberty and freedom, and you can't make me do this, and I want to be free, and yet the guy that they're focusing on, the guy that they're really holding as their God, is an authoritarian. He doesn't want you to be free. He's the last person that wants you to be free. He won't allow free protest. He won't allow a free vote. He won't allow women to choose how they, use their bodies. He won't allow LGBT plus people to live a normal life with everybody else. He thinks white people are superior to black people. It's not freedom or liberty under this guy's rule. This is an autocracy. And so there's this kind of disconnect between the people that are a bit like the trucker protest, where they came from, it started in Canada, didn't it, but kind of coming down to DC this week, and it's like 6 of them now. And there aren't even any mask mandates in place anymore. And, they're protesting something that was like a month ago. It's like, really? Now? But what they were protesting for was to not be told what to do. And yet, the guy that they support does exactly that. So there's this disconnect between, the cause and the reality. And I find it very interesting that people just don't seem to dig deep enough to kind of really engage, to really talk about it. Because it's very easy to say, I'm not getting vaccinated. It's a bioweapon invented by Dr. Fauci, which is what they say about, him and the vaccine. But the evidence is, clear, because, 10 billion doses have been given around the world now, and no one's had a problem. So it's like, in fact, people have been protected from getting sick. So obviously there's your evidence. There's no bigger study than that many doses. They still have no interest in engaging, because it's like the truth is irrelevant. So what's the point in being in a crowd, in a group, being part of a movement, if there is no basis or truth to your argument? Really, all you're doing is just being around like-minded people, being in a cult. And this is what happens with cults, you know. People are weak and they are vulnerable, and their vulnerabilities are accessed, and they end up buying into a whole movement. Even smart people, educated people, everybody has vulnerabilities. That's what Stephen Hassan talks about in the book. He's like in his 70s now, but he was actually kind of conscripted into a cult as well in his younger years, despite being a doctor, scientist. He talked about regressing and how, a lot of these people regress. And when I see Marjorie Taylor Greene being interviewed, she's so far down the rabbit hole, her tail is sticking out. She's on another planet. And yet, when you see her talk, she talks like a baby. She's regressed, this blindness that enables her to follow this kind of whole QAnon movement. It creates a form of regression to childhood. You just become a kind of big baby. And so that's what we're dealing with now. And I sometimes think that America is a perfect petri dish for this type of stuff. It's not a coincidence that Scientology started in America and exists in America, or Mormonism, or any of these kind of interesting cults that rely on people being gullible and refusing to question anything. Just like buy into stuff. I just wonder if these cults could start in other countries. Other cults have been started in other countries, of course they have. But those types of things, especially Scientology, which is a fascinating cult. And it's all around us here in Los Angeles. They seem to own half the real estate now, And it's no different to the Taliban or to, the Vladimir Putin's regime, where you basically pay people to work for you and you accommodate them. I see a lot of the people that are in Scientology or work for the Scientology departments, they work as front of house people, and they live opposite. They've been given accommodation so that they don't have to think, they don't have to do anything for themselves. It's all done for them. And that is the skill of the cult leader, is to ingratiate people into this world by saying, we'll look after you. All you have to do is follow the rule book. Don't deviate. Don't step outside. Conscript people. Have you ever been to the Scientology Celebrity Center in their open day? Have you ever thought about that?
I dare not go inside. I've done enough sketches that involve Scientology at comedy theaters next to the buildings to not really feel comfortable walking in those doors.
In the UCB? Yes,
in the UCB. Our rest in peace. May you return yet one day. Speaking of cults, though, improv. My goodness. I've had friends that have gone into the Scientology building to have a peek around, and I think with any group that you reference, the thing that keeps coming to mind for me is what makes it function is as you said, follow the scripture. It's follow these simple guidelines. We can really take a lot of the stress, alleviate the burden of your issues from you, and the emotional validation of it all, which is just the most powerful drug that I think anybody could have in terms of trying to influence thought. If you can validate someone emotionally and anything that you're concerned about, you are right and it's not your fault. It's sold. Done.
It's hard, being alive is hard.
Yeah.
Living in a city that's expensive like this, or where people are comparing themselves to each other all the time. Oh, so-and-so's doing really well, I'm not doing so well. It's hard,
It doesn't leave a lot of room for critical thought, even if it occurred to you to have it.
Yeah, people are busy, they're working multiple jobs, and they're trying to help with family and friends who might be in need. And so it's a lot. And I think that these organizations, they kind of take the pressure off. And some people who can't handle the pressure, because, I recognize people, in types. And in fact, on North Bronson, where the kind of entrance to the Scientology celebrity centre is. There's a crossing there, a pedestrian crossing. So you often have to stop there to let people cross, and invariably the people you're letting cross are Scientologists because they live opposite. And I like to look at them and see, what types of people would be drawn into this world and would want to work there and devote their life, because they're not very well paid, And so I see a theme in these people. I recognize that there's a type of vulnerability that enables them to be drawn in and given comfort by this. And, the church did this for years. This is why churches obviously are less in favor these days. Traditional churches and Protestant Catholic churches, they're less in favor. We have these more modern churches. But, if you look into the more modern churches as well, they're also cults. And I've done a lot of study into some of these modern churches and how they function. They call them preachers in sneakers, where they kind of modernize Christianity and talk about it like it's, kind of, lining up is like going into the Supreme store on a release day. And then the reality is that it's all the same. It's all just like fundraising. That's basically what these organizations do. They're basically just fundraising.
Yeah.
They're just dressed up as, a godly place. And I wouldn't deny anybody wanting to go and try it out and do it. Maybe if it works for you, if it works for you. But there are other ways of, reaching God if that's what you choose. Well, you don't have to give them all of your wages or a third or a half of your income or, because all of them have this as a theme. You give us, we need money. And really, traditional churches, certainly like the ones that I was around growing up in England, old churches, they never asked you for a penny. You go in, you worship, you pray, you seek counsel or sanctuary, confession, but there's no charge. There'll be a collection box and you might put in like a dime, but there's, none of that kind of huge. And then it's the same in America in politics. These huge sums of money that fundraising. I mean, Donald Trump under the Save America campaign has raised $110 million just in the last few weeks.
For what? Why? I mean, we know
saving America.
God. Right. Sorry, I forgot.
Got to
Very
save
believed there
America.
with the title.
And the tragedy is that the people who are in his cult, and the people who give him money, are the poorest people in America.
Yeah.
These people don't have any money for themselves, so they give a few bucks, and that's a lot for them, but they really believe him, and he doesn't care about them.
Or on the other side, you have lobbyists and companies that are giving him money to keep whatever they're trying to keep going.
Yeah. Well, this is why he kind of doesn't know what climate change is. Right? He thinks it's clean air and clean water. He has no concept of it whenever he's asked. Well, we had the cleanest air, we had the cleanest water. And it's like, what are you even talking about? Like, those two things have got nothing to do with climate change. Like, who are you?
That is the operative question, because I think it's still, for as much as we know about him, I don't think I know that. I mean, I know he's an idiot. Trying not to speak too far.
I had this conversation with somebody a couple of days ago about me saying he's an idiot, and they said he really isn't an idiot. He's one of the sharpest operators. He knows exactly what he's doing.
I can't. That was, what, I was going to ask you this earlier. I can't tell still to this day how intentional it all is. How much is off the cuff, how much is planned, and the barometer of how sharp is he? So you believe him to be pretty well at the controls.
Completely. I mean, he doesn't have an intellect, so he doesn't know any words. You can often tell somebody's intellect by the type of vocabulary they use. And he doesn't have any words. He says things like big and great, and, he doesn't have any way of describing anything because he has no intellect. He's not educated, but he's also not traveled. He's not worldly, He's a narcissist. He's a malignant narcissist. So he doesn't care for other people, or he doesn't care for art. He doesn't care for anything that isn't directly related to him. He can't appreciate anything. But what he can do is he can be laser focused on what he wants and what he needs. And if he wants the presidency, he will absolutely go and get it. He knows how to do that. He knows how to manipulate people. He knows how to communicate. He's a great performer. The guy is amazing, but not as a president. You know, America was embarrassed on the world stage. World leaders were embarrassed for America. That famous video at the G20 of the leader of France and Germany and a couple of other countries just like laughing at him.
I remember that well.
So, you know, he's going to be back. And we really have to take that very seriously. And if anybody like wants to talk about him and people are like, oh, let's not talk about him, it's over. It's not over. Because of the legacy of his racism and his misogyny and his, you know, his fascist values is now echoing around America. And, you know, the reason that Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd is because he knew that in Trump's America he would get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for joining us today, Travis. Appreciate you. What a
Likewise.
pleasure.
Looking forward to doing it again tomorrow.
We'll do it again tomorrow morning from 9 a.m. Pacific. That's it's 11 o'clock Eastern. No, yeah, 11 o'clock, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock Eastern. Apologies. Thank you to everybody who got in touch. Master, Denny's, Wonderful Fish, Ace, Mint Elephant, Swell Crab, Sandy, William, Calm Wolf, Monica, Karen, Nine, Wonderful Fish, Fortunate Crocodile, Harley, Spotty Bison, Brian and Max and Heaton, anybody and everybody who's messaged the show. Stay with Backchannel. It's happening all day today. Your pal Hal is next, and I'll come back tomorrow morning.